Welcome to the Cultivating Business Growth Podcast, bringing you bi-weekly discussions designed to help you grow your business and create the lifestyle you desire. Elevate your business with proven strategies from virtual CFOs, CPAs, and business advisors. We discuss real-world challenges solved with actionable steps that get you the results you need, both in business and building the life you deserve.
Welcome to episode number 172 of the Cultivating Business Growth Podcast, brought to you by Willow Virtual CFO. Today, we are excited to discuss people-first leadership, how to build high-performing teams that drive growth with Lindy Hoyt. Lindy is the founder of People Ambassadors, a consultancy dedicated to helping small and mid-sized businesses unlock the full potential of their teams through people-first leadership. With a background in HR strategy, team development, and organizational growth, Lindy partners with business owners to build strong cultures, high-performing teams, and leadership systems that support long-term success. Her approach is practical, rooted in experience, and focused on helping businesses thrive by putting their people at the center. Welcome, Lindy. We are excited to have you join us today to talk about the people side of business.
Great. Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you. I feel like this is kind of the side that not all business owners are really focused on, but people really are the heart of your business. And so you really have to make sure you're growing that good team so that you can help drive that success and growth. So let's dive right in. Can you start by defining a high performing team and how it's different from just a good group of employees?
Absolutely. And I think this is a great question to start out with. I do believe there's this common misconception that if you have really high performers, that naturally the team is going to be successful. But that's definitely not the case in my experience. A high-performing team is one that, yes, achieves what they set out to do, but they also do it in a way that fosters collaboration, growth, and a sense of belonging. The way to build this is truly from the top. The leader really sets the tone for everything that you want in your team. You need to be that example. What the leader models will have a big impact on their team. In order to be a high-performing team, you first have to have strong relationships. That's the crux amongst the group. Obviously, this takes time. It takes consistency and vulnerability to really help build that trust. If you do not have a high level of trust on your team, not much else will live if you don't have that. I think of this as like the bedrock to a strong team. And then really from there, it's building that environment, that ecosystem where people really feel welcomed and praised for speaking up. I've been in many experiences where that's not the case, and it's not healthy. You got to be able to share that constructive feedback and that the leader, welcomes it. Along with that, I would say create an environment where people know it's okay to disagree. It's okay to disagree on points. And a lot of times in my experience, that's been where some of the best ideas truly come from. Having that trust and people knowing that there's a safe place to share that feedback really helps build that psychological safety, which is so crucial to the team's success and to the innovation that happens because of it.
Yeah, I love that. I think, people are so important to, having that successful business. And I know I've seen it with our team and being in business for almost 10 years now. You really have to have people who are in alignment with your core values. So one of the things we look at is core values, and we find, the more that we can stick to our core values too, they're not just words on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
That really starts to build the trust, right? Because then they're like, oh, they really do mean that you can have work-life balance. They don't just say it and then expect me to just work lots of hours and get the job done no matter what. So I feel like it's really important to kind of have that, but then actually live it. And some of it just takes time, right? You have to have experience and dealing with that. And so I think it is really valuable to make sure that your team trusts you, that you're trustworthy, and then you're leading from a top by example, as you mentioned.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. That's great. Those are great examples, really defining what the values are at your company and walking the walk. I mean, it's easy said to done. It's easy to have the poster up on the wall, but the employees will see through that if you're actually doing that or not.
Right.
And I think, once you really have that trust and psychological safety, the next step is making sure that everyone has like a really clear picture of where you're going, what the company wants to achieve, what success looks like for them, what your individual team wants to achieve, and then what the individual level, what does success look like for them. The way I look at it is like a rowing team. There's one
Mhm.
person that's steering, that's really kind of setting the pace, and that's you, the leader. And then there's the crew, the team, each person really kind of pulling their weight in sync. And if someone's out of rhythm or unclear on the direction, like that's where the whole boat slows down. And, I think that's why having really clear, aligned goals matter. Everyone needs to know what they're rowing toward. You can make this happen by smart objectives, making sure they're specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and time bound, and making sure they're connecting directly to that company's bigger vision. I think when each person understands that they're a part of the larger team, that they can really all help create a really great momentum. Um, with that. And I think the other key component I would say that makes a high performing team is having accountability, both personally and shared. High performing teams, they hold themselves accountable, but they also, not out of pressure, but out of respect for the mission, they hold each other accountable. And as you're digging in as a leader, you having those goals, and maybe somebody's not making the goal, my rule of thought is to never assume. I always encourage my leaders, stay curious, always ask questions before jumping into conclusions. I find that mindset is really helpful, not just in business but in life.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you focus on accountability because that was a different, a new. We just recently went through a core values shift. We didn't
Mhm.
really change anything, substantially, but we kind of retermed things. And accountability was one that I was like, we need to add accountability because I work
Yeah.
with a lot of businesses, and I think we have pretty good accountability here with our firm. But I work with a lot of clients, and you just see the lack of accountability, and it's such
Yeah.
a drain on the business because nothing's getting done. Nobody's in charge of anything, right? So nothing really happens. And so, as I work with a lot of clients and try to get them on board and with processes and financial work that we're doing, things just fall flat if there's nobody who's going to be accountable. Like you can have all the dreams in the world and all the goals for the company, but if there's nobody who's actually going to say, hey, you said XYZ, are we doing that? Do we need to do that? Who needs to do that? Right?
Yeah.
Having somebody who's kind of driving that, again, that accountability, a lot of things fall short. And so we added that as a specific core value because I thought, like, if you don't have that, you can't do a whole lot of other things. So
Right.
I love that you
Absolutely. No, that it's
talked
it's
about
such a
accountability.
great ad. I mean, it's really to helping that team realize what it takes to be successful. If not, you're just kind of going in a lot of various directions. And I think with the accountability piece, it goes into what I would say lastly on this one is all of this communication is the heartbeat of a successful team. Communication, you say like that's such a broad thing, but to have honest conversations about somebody being accountable or not, having
Hmm.
those difficult conversations, thoughtful questions, expressing genuine care. I feel like those are signals of having a really healthy, connected culture. And I believe truly that those matter the most, in having a high performing team, because what you put in, you get out. If you truly care about your employees, the employees will care about you and the team.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit more. Can you talk a little bit more about what people first leadership is and how does it change the way your business can grow?
Oh, absolutely. I think people first leadership is about intentionally centering your people in every decision that you're making. Not just a nice to have, but really having that be a strategic priority. It's asking when you're creating new policies, how will this impact them? You're having a new hire come on board. How is that going to impact the team and the dynamics? Maybe you're contemplating doing a restructure. What does this mean for the team? How is it going to impact the team of those people that run your business day in and day out? Whether you're planning for growth in your company, navigating change as we're constantly doing, people first leaders pause and consider, okay, how is this going to impact my team's well-being, their ability to thrive here, their experience at work? It's leadership that values really the impact over appearances. I feel like appearances, optics, all of those things, can be a big driver, but really the people first leadership is actually thinking about how it's going to impact the employees.
Yeah, and you have to be authentic about it, right? Because
Yeah.
you can try, I feel like if it's not really true to who you are and what you care about, that's going to be, that's going to come through. But if you do, and I feel like, again, people are kind of the center and the lifeblood of your business. If you don't have people that are there supporting you, helping you do what you're trying to do, you're going to struggle to grow and scale. And so, I totally love that perspective of thinking about how it impacts the people. I think every time we have a big business change, it's how do we be very transparent? How do we tell people as soon as possible if, big changes are happening? How do we, like, maybe that upsets them, to your point, hard conversations. Better to have the hard conversation in March than like blindside people in, October about some big change that's just now, sudden and drastic, and, and just talk about why things have to happen, because you're running a business. It's not always pretty and smooth sailing. So you have to be able to have good communication, honest conversations, like you said. But I do think, putting people first and how it's going to impact those people.
Yeah.
Again, I feel like we do this well here. We're a very small group. We have 10 people right now. We've been up to probably 18, 19, 20. And one of the things we need is good people, right? And so they are at kind of the heart of a lot of decisions we make. So I love that perspective and kind of putting a term around it so that people kind of think a little bit more clearly about that. It is a lot about business decisions, and sometimes there are just business decisions that aren't fun to make and you have to make them. But how can you, make it in a way that you're considerate and respectful and transparent with your team? So,
absolutely. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Talk about some of the biggest mistakes that business owners make when trying to build their teams.
Yes, this is another great question from a couple of decades of experience of watching this kind of firsthand. And I would say there's three buckets that really come top to mind when I think of this. So one of them I would say is hiring reactively. So filling a role too quick because someone left or the team is overwhelmed without really stepping back and pausing. I think the pause can answer a lot of concerns and questions, but I would say specifically with this one, really taking a pause and saying, okay, what do we actually need right now? It may have shifted. A senior project manager may have walked out the door, but maybe you actually need an associate project manager now, because of the shifts in the team. So nothing's ever static. Everything's always changing. So really establishing what do we really need now? Too often, maybe the role being hired for hasn't been clearly defined or thoughtfully, put together. Leaders skip the step on pausing to assess what the business actually needs, and they really need to get clear on, okay, what does this role need to do? What does success look like in 6 to 12 months? So really identifying that. And, I would say that my motto in hiring, if they're not a for sure yes, they're a for sure no. Don't convince yourself into a maybe. I've seen it happen multiple times where they regret, then they're an employee, then they have other issues that come up. So really you want to make sure it's one, what you need, and two, it's going to be a good add for the culture that you have there for the company. And really doing all of that work on the front end, taking the time. It protects the business, it protects the team, and it protects the person stepping into that role if you do that work.
Yeah.
So that would definitely be my first
Yeah, I
one.
feel like we've done that. We've definitely hired, you're desperate. Like, I just need
Yes.
a
Yep.
body. I have so much work to do. Yeah. And
Yep.
it tends to, we've seen it. It sometimes works out great for a little while, but in the long run, it's not the right answer.
Mhm.
Or you've brought that person on and now it's like more work because they want your hand holding and they need, and you're like, I just need you to go do this work. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm too
Yeah.
over, whelmed. I don't have the time. And so, yeah, I think stepping back and assessing what do we really need now, because it may be different. It may be a higher
Mhm.
level role. It may be a lower level role. It
Right.
may be two people. Like, sometimes you just
Right.
need to stop and be like, actually, maybe this has turned into a two-person job, which is why this one person, left, because it was just too
Right.
much. And so I think stopping and analyzing is really a wise step in the process. And I also love your advice about if they're not 100% yes, they're a no, because I've hired a lot of people and I started to get to that point too. Like, I'm like, if we're having to have another conversation about whether to hire them and we're not sure, let's just not hire them
Mhm.
because we have brought those people in. And again, we're like, well, let's just give it a try. Let's just see how it goes. But almost, I would say 9 out of 10 times, if I have concerns at the beginning,
Yep.
it's not going to work. And so, and maybe it works for a few months or a year, but then in the long run, you're like, this is, not a good fit. So I've felt the pain of some of those things. I'm
Yeah.
sure lots of business owners can commiserate as well. So,
Right. Yes.
I feel like I heard recently, was it fire quickly, hire slowly?
Yes.
And I'm always like, we're always like firing people slowly because we feel bad. We want to give them lots of chances. We want to know for sure that it's not working. But yeah, I was
Yeah.
like, I feel like we need to flip that. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and fire quickly if we're like, this isn't working, because
Yeah.
yeah, it tends to drag out.
Yeah, I feel like the fire quickly within reason. I think there's obviously a lot of caveats to
Yeah.
that. To your point, making sure you give them an opportunity, but overall, yes, you don't want it to drag on for months and months because it I've seen it, impacts the morale of the team if they see, well, gosh, this person is not contributing and how are they still here? It really does impact the
Right.
team. And the last thing I'll say about my first point on this one, I was one of my favorite recruiters I worked with in the past, and she would describe like the interview process with someone is kind of like dating. Like if they're that
Mhm.
like that's like as good as it's going to get. Like after you hire them on, that is like the best. So if
Yeah,
you're
it's
not
like the honeymoon period, right? My
yes,
director of operations is always like, this is the honeymoon period. If this is what we're
yeah,
getting in the honeymoon period, we're in trouble.
yes, exactly,
Yeah,
exactly,
love
yeah.
it. Love it.
Um,
Yeah, did you want to finish that thought? Sorry.
No, I was just going to say there was a couple other ones that I would say that I've seen happen with managers or where there's areas where there's opportunities to improve. For sure, I would say onboarding is another one. That one just gets onboarding swept under the rug. Like you don't really what you're doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is another critical area that I feel like is often overlooked. You can't expect someone to succeed in a system that they don't understand. A solid onboarding experience, one that's really intentional, clear, people focused, is really one of the most powerful ways to retain someone. Like making sure they have a really good plan for their first, few months, even to help them really get on board, because it takes time.
Yeah.
But that's one where I've seen again and again where there really isn't a clear process around that.
Yeah, we have a process of training and, making sure they're meeting everybody, especially we're virtual. So
Yeah.
onboarding's different too, right? Like they're just
Yeah.
out there sitting by themselves. If we don't have like an
Right.
intentional plan of how to introduce people, how to get familiar with softwares and things. So I can see that that's also really important as you're hiring and bringing new people on, because again, all the time and effort you spent to find that right person goes to the wayside if you can't bring
Right.
them in a smooth and kind of streamlined fashion.
Yeah.
So, can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit more about how small or growing businesses develop high performing teams with limited resources? As we know, small businesses don't always have a lot of funds initially. And so, how do we do that?
Yeah. So I would definitely say start with the basics that don't cost a lot but go a long way. So number one, getting very, very clear on what the roles are, who's doing what success looks like having that literally written down, like these are the responsibilities, these are the goals, this is what success looks like having that as a framework. You need to have that first. And that really helps reduce confusion and increases accountability. Next, I would say invest in creating regular feedback opportunities. It doesn't have to be formal, it doesn't just have to be a year-end, appraisal review or things like that, but just consistent check-ins where people feel heard and supported. That really helps build that trust and surfaces issues before they grow up. I always, constantly, one of the things I'm always talking to my managers about is you have to nip it in the bud. If there's a situation there, if there's something going on now, it's not going to go away. You have to talk about it. You have to address it. And I would say, and if you are going to invest some money, I would say first, ensure you know what your team needs, like making sure you understand what those skill gaps are and get the employee to be a part of it. Really have an understanding of what they actually want. Don't go and buy a huge, program off the shelf when it's either not going to be directly applicable to what the skills gaps are, or the employees don't have an interest in growing in that area. Get them to have input in it. It helps them to feel empowered that they're taking control of their career too, and giving you feedback on what they're actually looking to do and looking to grow. And then I would say, make sure to get the most bang for your buck. If they're going to like a professional development conference or something like that, have them come back and bring, their learnings and share it with the team, kind of make sure, give them that opportunity to do that too. And that helps them, share from a leadership perspective, empowers them, and it helps the other teammates too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I think feedback's really important. We always strive for that. And I love the like kind of nip it in the bud. We're like, we have quarterly touch points, but we're not waiting for the quarterly touch point. We're like, don't put it on a list over here. Like, it's like, that doesn't help because
Right.
we're not going to deal with something for 2 months if it's not going well. So we really try to be, very upfront and just be like, hey, this isn't working out. We want you to work it. And, we want you to handle this way, or we see that you're doing X, Y, and Z. We need you to shift and do it a little differently. So we do try to do that. So I think that is important to your point. Like, the longer it goes on, the longer you've allowed it to go on, right? Like, well, it wasn't a problem 3 months ago. Like, why is it a problem today?
Yep.
So I feel like, again, hard conversations sometimes have to be had, but yeah, it's easier when you're like, hey, just noticed this last week.
Yep.
That's not how we handle this. We need to go about it in this way. And then you also start to have that, do they improve that and get better? Or are they still doing it and they're just not really listening? So you start that, kind of process of communicating, asking for the change. And then if they don't, then you start to have something to document if necessary.
Yep.
Hopefully it doesn't come to that.
Right.
I love it. So what does it look like when a company transforms through people first leadership? Do you have any examples in companies you've worked with?
Yeah. Actually, one of my clients this last year went through my stay interview offering, where I had individual anonymous conversations with each employee to really understand what was working there, what wasn't, what they needed more of. And I pulled out the key themes, both positive and constructive, and presented them to the CEO. To the CEO's credit, they didn't just listen, they acted on it. They enhanced their benefits greatly. They gave clear direction on the company strategy and made a real effort to address the things that their team had shared. As a result, the turnover has decreased, the culture is stronger, the engagement is higher, and you can just feel it in the day to day. I feel like that's what people first leadership looks like in action. It's about really listening, following through, making decisions that show your people that they matter. And when you do that, it shows up on your bottom line, by reducing turnover. That's a strong indicator.
Yeah. I think there's nothing, worse than giving feedback to never see any, like, why are you asking me for this if nothing ever changes? Or, we all feel this way, but it doesn't matter. And again, you're asking for it, but there's no change. So I think, to your point, the follow up and follow through is important from the leaders, to truly listen and understand, hey, what can we improve? What can we do better? And how do we make our team happier, because to your point, when they're happier, they're working harder, they're more committed, they're more accountable, they really want what's best for the company. And so, yeah, you see that at the bottom line. So that's amazing. So if we were to share just 1 to 2 things a listener can do this week to strengthen their team, what would that be?
It seems overly simple, but I would say have an honest conversation with each of your employees, one-on-one. If you're not already doing this regularly, I would suggest starting it this week. It doesn't have to be formal. Just ask, how are you really doing? How are you doing? And what's one thing I can do to help you be more successful in your role? I feel like those 2 questions really can open the door to trust, clarity, and support, and show your team that you're paying attention and that you care. And here's the thing I would say, I would caution, don't rush into fixing it. Sometimes people just want to be heard, and other times they'll give you exactly, what you need to improve, and how the team works. But I do believe it seems small, but I do believe that having these small, but being intentional can really spark big change. And I don't think there's never been a better time than now to have those conversations.
Yes, I think and to your point, just do you recommend asking those questions, more than once a year, more than like how periodic do you tend to like want to have these questions? I feel like we do a pretty good job of this. And I know like when my team members are getting overwhelmed or we've like assigned a lot of work, I'm always like, hey, are you good? Like, do you have too much on your plate? We can shift things around. How are you feeling about everything? So I feel like we do a good job, but do you have like, hey, make sure you're asking once a quarter, make sure like, do you have any timelines, or is it just more fluid?
Yeah, I would definitely recommend checking in with your employees. I mean, it seems like a lot, but I would suggest, every time you have your check-in. So I would recommend, once a week or once every other week, and just kind of have a reminder just to check in to see how they're doing, because I mean, the world is moving very fast. There's a lot of things happening. So I don't feel like there's no reason not to check in more frequently with your folks.
Okay. Yes,
Yeah.
that's a lot more frequently than I was thinking.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we also kind of tend to think they're going to come to us too, right? And I think to your point is you got to give them kind of some space, because no matter how open you may be, sometimes it's hard to broach a subject or hard to say, hey, I can't work so many hours. Like I need to shift some things.
Yep.
So I think to your point, trying to have those conversations, like you said, maybe just on a call that you're already on. Just say,
Yeah.
hey, how are things going? How's your workload? How do you feel about everything?
Yeah.
Anything we can help? I feel like the second step I need to add. What can I do to make it easier? What is the question?
What's one thing I can do to help you be more successful in your
More
role?
successful.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love that.
And to the point of with, asking that question more frequently, that way, if you have larger spans of time in between that question, you're able to find out about things earlier. You have there's that window. It's kind of like extending that bridge. They may not share it with you, but we're also managers. We're not mind readers, but we at least can ask the question
Right.
to give that opportunity to share that with you, because you'd much rather know if there's something more serious going on earlier than later, so you can help support them.
Right. Yep. Wow. This has been really helpful. I think, there's a lot more people center focus that everyone can be these days. I think it's
Mhm.
been a hard and tough couple, 5-10 years, and people are just trying to, be productive, be a part of a team. But I think focusing on them and giving them kind of that attention that they deserve and need, A, helps the person, and B, helps you as a business owner be successful, and have a really coherent and good, solid working team. So thank you for sharing all your insights today. If anybody wants to reach out to Lindy, where can they find you? Do you have a website? Can you feel free to share how they can connect with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I do have a website. It's peopleambassadors.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn, Lindy Hoyt. Happy to help and support however I can.
Awesome. And we will also be including a free downloadable document as part of our resources for the show notes. So check that out if you're looking for some more information. Lindy, thank you for joining us today. Keep that momentum going, and we will see you next time.